Hi everyone, today we are going to do a quick review of composite shapes from Friday and then look at a few different types of composite shapes, and then I've got another practice for you to work on today in class. If you do finish that practice early, you can check it using the answer key on Schoology and then go ahead and work on your study guide. All right, so on Friday we looked at composite shapes like hexagons, octagons, and trapezoids and split them into triangles, rectangles, some familiar shapes that we had formulas for. So let's just review with this hexagon real quick, and then we're going to look at some new stuff. So for hexagons and octagons, we split these into triangles that were all the same size by connecting opposite corners. So here you can see we've got 6 equal triangles, which have a base of 6 and a height of 1.73. So again, we're looking for that right angle, which we see right here. So this would be our base, which would be that same 2, and our height of 1.73. So we're gonna find the area of that triangle, base times height, divided by 2, because it is a triangle. We've got to divide it by 2. So that's gonna give me 1.73 meters squared. And then for this one, because there are 6 of those triangles that are all the same length, we're going to do 1.73 times 6, which gives us 10.38. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to look at some other shapes that might not be as familiar to us. So we've got this random looking shape that we can find the area of. So what we want to do is, again, just like we did with our composite shapes before, split it into known shapes. So here we could pretty easily look at this and see that we can split this into some squares and rectangles. So then I'm going to find the area of each of those pieces and combine. So up top, we're going to look at this piece right here, which is a 2 by 2, and we've got a matching one of them over here. So if I find the area of both of those, 2 times 2 gives us 4 here, and 2 times 2 gives us 4 here. Now the tricky part here is finding this bigger rectangle at the bottom. We've got this length labeled as 10, and then we've got this side that's labeled as 6, but we have to be careful here because this 6 is telling us that this entire side has a length of 6. So that means that from here to here is not 6, from this corner to this corner. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove what's already been used for this top piece up here, which is going to be the same as this, which is 2. So that tells us that this length of the big rectangle is going to be 4, because the whole thing, 6 minus the 2 we've used, leaves us with a side length of 4. So now we can find the area of this bigger rectangle. 10 times 4 is 40. So to get my total area, all we're going to do is add all of those pieces together. 40 plus 4 plus 4 gives me a total area of 48 square meters. We can also look at shapes like this, okay? These are our last 2 that we're going to do together, and then we're going to fill in your notes and you're going to do some practice. So this top one says a triangular drawing is pasted on a square piece of paper. The area of the square paper that is still visible is shaded in the picture. Find the area of the shaded portion of this image. So we talked last week about how a triangle is really just half the area of the rectangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the area, or the easiest way to do this is to find the area of this big piece. So think of one giant piece of rectangular paper, and then we can find the area of what's covered with that triangle and remove it to see what's left. So if we look for the area of the rectangle, so again, I drew that, or I start that set up by doing A, and then the little rectangle icon to show that right here I'm going to show my formula for the rectangle. So this rectangle is 8. This side length is not labeled, but we can assume that it is the same as this height of the triangle. So this is an 8 by 12, 8 by 12 rectangle. So we're just going to do 8 times 12 to give us a total area of 96 square meters. And then we're going to find the area of the triangle, which has that right angle here. So base of 8, height of 12, but this time we're dividing by 2 because it is a triangle. So that gives us an area of 48 square meters. So to find the area of this shaded part, we're essentially taking the area of the entire piece, 96, and we're subtracting what we covered up with the triangle. 96 minus 48 gives us 48 square meters. That one works out perfectly to be half of it because it is a triangle covering half of its equivalent rectangle. Our last one down here is this funky looking shape that we can split into a rectangle with the triangular piece up top. So we're going to do the same thing we've been doing since Friday. We're going to find the area of each of these pieces individually and add them together. Again, the trickiest part with this composite shape work is to find the missing side lengths when we need them. So let's start with the easier piece, which is the rectangle. So if we look at this rectangle, we can see that it is labeled as 27 by 18. So to get the area of that rectangle, 27 times 18, length times width, gives us an area of 486 square inches. Now for this triangle, we don't have a piece labeled as the right angle, but the right angle is always going to form with the tallest point of our triangle straight down to the base. So we can assume that this is going to be our height. So that height is labeled as 12. What's missing here is the length of the base. So this piece that I drew in black right here. So I want you to think for a second, do you have an idea of how you could figure out what the base of that triangle is? So to find the base of that triangle, what we do know is that this entire length all the way across the top of this rectangle is going to be 27 inches because that's what it's labeled down here. So its opposite side would be the same. So 27 inches. And then what we also know is that of that 27 inches, 7 of it is used here and 7 of it is used here. So to find that missing length of the rectangle, or sorry, of the triangle, we're going to do, 27, the whole length, minus the 7 on the left, and then minus the 7 on the right, which leaves us with a length of 13 inches here. So again, I took this entire length, 27, I took away this 7, which gave me 20, and this 7, which left me with 13. So now I have the base, 13, and the height, 12 of this triangle. We can do 13 times 12 divided by 2, which gives me an area of 78 square inches. And now to get my total area, we're going to add the area of the rectangle, 486, plus the area of that triangle, which gives us a total area of 564 square inches. So on Friday, you were practicing shapes like hexagons, octagons, and trapezoids. Today, you're going to have some more obscure shapes that you can find the areas of, similar to this. Okay. Before you get to work on that, we're going to fill in your notes, but I also want to just show you one more thing. Going back to that shape we started with that looked kind of like this, the way I split that was like this. We do have another option for shapes like this, composite shapes, that sometimes are easier. So another thing I want you to keep in mind as you work through this practice worksheet is instead of splitting it like that, you could pretend that you're filling it in and making it one giant rectangle. So think of this as one big rectangle. Find the area of that, and then you could also find the area of this little piece that you kind of closed in and take that away. So you could split it like we did at the beginning into 3 rectangles, or you could close it in, which is sometimes easier, and then just remove or take away the piece that you kind of closed in there. So keep that in mind as you work through today's practice. So in your notes, you should have one last shape that we haven't labeled yet. So in your notebook, you're going to fill this in, and on the outside, we're going to draw just the visual that we're splitting this into a rectangle and a triangle, and then under that flap, again, because it's a composite shape, we don't have a set formula that we're going to use. So underneath that flap, we're just going to write that we'll split this object into familiar shapes and add their areas. So split into familiar shapes and add areas together. All right, so like I said earlier, once you get that filled into your notes, you're going to get today's practice with composite shapes, which I think is probably the hardest part of your summative, which you'll be taking on Thursday. You'll do some practice, and if you do finish and check that, you can use the rest of the time to work on your study guide. All right, see you soon.